I think it's taken the market by very much surprise, as we all know. It's still Sunday in the United States, in New York, and what impact that's having to the market has been one of massive sell-off. You've seen what's happened to the yuan. Have a look at the Australian dollar, look at the Chinese equities, and, of course, running that across to crude. So, yeah, it's taken them by the back foot, and I think it's going to be a fascinating week. What happens? It's very hard to calculate what his intentions are, but certainly he's thrown a grenade well and truly into the lap of the Chinese.
Seems like the Chinese aren't holding back either, Peter, because we are getting reports early this morning that China may in fact suspend trade talks that were scheduled for later this week. So it seems like the Chinese are also at least planning to give it back. Now, whether cooler heads prevail later on in the week or not, we don't know yet. But it seems like China is not backing down for the moment at least.
I think you're right, Deepanshu. There's no doubting that. I mean, he's very, he doesn't mind going to a little bit of a strategic brinkmanship, and I feel as though that how that plays out, China's in some ways has got an upper hand, but well, they may have had the upper hand last week, but they certainly don't have the upper hand moving into Washington this week. And if they do cancel those talks, then he'll really, I would say, increase the amount of tariffs. And really, you know, the gloves will be off because he's really wanted to put something to bed here, and it hasn't been allowed to happen. And that's going to create, I think, again, a level of very much uncertainty as the week progresses.
So, Peter, now, as Deepanshu was also pointing out right now, there is a possibility where China could consider dealing the next trade talk after Trump's tariff threat. What is the kind of impact it could have in terms of emerging markets? Firstly, the impact of China, and then how is going to be, how is the effect actually going to follow through?
Well, I think what the first part's going to be is it'll create volatility, and that's been evident what's happened over the last matter of hours since Asian trades opened. Secondly, what happens once India opens, then into the Middle East, and of course the Euro trading day, and then tonight, of course, then leading into America. So if there's a big heavy sell-off, that'll only continue, and it'll be a very big sell-off when it hits New York tonight. There's the first side. The second side is emerging markets. Well, it creates uncertainty. Trump will probably, I would say, if he has this sort of impact to China, he'll go the next step, which will be get his gaze up and look at Europe and probably look at, talking to them and seeing what sort of trade tariffs he can impose on the Eurozone as well. So that's where it's running at the moment, and it's going to be a very fascinating couple of days to see whether the Chinese attend Washington and what their fallback position is going to be.
Peter, I'm just trying to understand, and it's always difficult to try and understand what the real motives are behind Donald Trump and the things that he does. But I mean, we've had extremely strong US jobs data, the best in 50 years, and Trump has been tweeting to town about that. US growth, while there are concerns it may slow down, continues to remain strong for the moment. At least Wall Street is at record highs. What's the sense of going ahead and doing something like this right now? I mean, what's the rationale for putting a spanner in the works, even if talks aren't progressing as fast as you'd like them to? Is it just some sort of pressure tactic then from Trump to, again, talk tough and possibly get the Chinese back on the negotiating table? I mean, I'm just trying to understand, why would he do something like this when everything seems to be going well for the moment, at least for the US?
Well, Deepanshu, I think that summarises President Trump so magnificently from the views as far as analysts and media and the world looking at him, that he does unconventional things. He didn't go to a press conference, he said, was quite simply, and then hit it up as far as social media. So he wants to, I don't know whether it's throwing a spanner in the works, but it's just getting very much their attention. Things are dragging on too much, and he wants to get action. He wants a deal to be solved and move on to his next part, which is running his country. He realises how strong the domestic economy is. He feels as though that he needs to make this happen, and he's not going to back down until he gets some sort of deal over the line. So if it upsets the Chinese, that's the way he is. They better get used to dealing with President Trump, not the other way around. They've had a very easy run with the prior presidents, be it, of course, Obama, Clinton and Bush, and now it's a different agenda completely. And he's raising his showmanship to say, if you want a deal, let's get a deal done. And if you don't want to, then these are the tariffs. And they all also understand what the negative's going to be to their GDP. And if he goes all the way, I'm sure it's going to have a major impact to Chinese GDP the best part of about 1.5% if he's allowed to get tariffs on everything, Deepanshu.